We welcome you into juniors at Brooklyn. As you can see, home of the famous cheesecake. I'm going to have a hard time concentrating with all these desserts in front of us. But the first edition of Brooklyn's On the Beat, and we're joined by some very special guests, the New York Post's Tim Bontemps, also Wall Street Journal contributor Alex Raskin. Guys, thanks for being here with us. First of all, early impressions of the NBA season. What have you guys thought up to this point so far about what you've seen across the league?
I think only a couple teams seem to be trying right now. It looks like not just the Nets, but it looks like the Miami Heat are still waiting to wake up. The Indiana Pacers right now are the only ones that look like they're at some sort of a level where they're going to be competing throughout the year.
The other thing that stood out to me, I'd say you'd probably agree, is the number of teams that people thought were going to do poorly that have gotten off such good starts, whether it's the Suns, the Sixers, the Celtics, the Magic. They've all won a lot of games, so I don't think people before the year wouldn't have thought they'd win.
Well, what do you think about, the Nets putting into that category of the Heat, but up to this point, this group really has not accomplished anything. What do you think about what they've done so far and the fact that they're still in the process of trying to come together?
The cliche has been, it's a process. But these guys really haven't played before, and we're seeing all-stars who are known to be great players, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, playing really reduced minutes. Andre Kirilenko's barely been out there. So we really don't have any idea of what this team could be. This is still really a preseason looking team right now. Everyone has to be patient right now.
But at the same time, the way the Nets put this team together, the way they talked going into the preseason, the way they talked really all up until the start of the regular season was, we're going to win now. There's a team that's ready to compete. We're ready to go. So the fact that they come out of the gate slow, now they're going back and saying it's a process, but everything they did up until now has been that there is no process and that we have to win now. Billy King even said during training camp that our window is really this year. So when they get off to a slow start like this, and it is cause, I think, for concern for both them and people around the league.
Do you worry about the injuries? Because, of course, outsiders looking in talk about this team, veteran team, but also the ages. And these guys didn't want to hear it early on, but do these injuries we're seeing at the early parts of the season concern you?
They matter up to a point, but when you see guys like Mason Plumlee step up, when you find answers along the way, Andre Kirilenko has been banged up, but what we've seen is Alan Anderson has been that guy coming off the bench who can defend multiple positions. I still think it's more about biding your time and trying to last until you get to that point. I think Kid said it a few times at the beginning of the year that we're trying to be playing our best basketball at the end.
Yeah, I would say that, most of I agree totally with Alex. Guys like Sean Livingston, Alan Anderson, Mason Plumlee have all stepped up and played really well, but I think Darren Williams has to be a concern. You look at the way last year went with the ankle issues he had. Now he's had 2 different sprains, one in each ankle through the first 6 weeks of the season. That's a pretty big problem.
Is there something positive to take from the Nets style, what they're able to play against, as we've seen them beat Miami, play Indiana close, that could be good down the line, knowing that they can play against teams like that are a slower style?
Yeah, I think the Nets, and it's a big contrast from last year's team, this is a much better defensive team in the half court and in transition. Transition is just about effort, getting back, making sure you know what you're doing. The half court defense, and that's where Kevin Garnett, you can't really put your finger on what he's doing for you, but the communication's suddenly there. Brooke Lopez wasn't really that voice last year. They needed someone on the front line to really tell people where they're going, where the pick is coming from. I think we're already starting to see it. The defense really understanding what the other team's trying to do. And that's got to be the strength of this team, because offensively right now, they're just feeling each other out.
Well, I think the best thing Nets have going for them is how terrible the Eastern Conference is. Sure. I mean, you really look around. I mean, the Knicks are probably pretty much the universal 5th choice in the conference, and they're a train wreck right now with Tyson Chandler hurt. You look at the Pistons, they've been awful. The Hawks are up and down. So even though the Nets are off to a rough start, I think there's 2 or 3 teams over 500 in the whole conference. So they've got enough time to get themselves together, and really, They wanted to get one of those top 4 seeds, get to the second round, and take their chances against those teams in 2 series and hope their veterans can come through. And, the way it's broke, even though they haven't had the best start, I think the fact that the other teams are so bad, it's kind of given them a chance to feel their way and, like Alex said, kind of get used to each other on the court without any consequences.
Best play of the season so far?
For the Nets, I would say, and it's completely at odds with everything else he's done for the team, Kevin Garnett's putback dunk was awesome.
Yeah.
Where he catches it with one hand and spikes it back in. Later he said it was just timing, he had the timing right. But I think that speaks to him not having his timing for the rest of the time.
And I would say from the Nets standpoint, it was the 2 shots Joe Johnson hit, because that
Sure.
team was in serious trouble. It was only a few games into the season, but they were really reeling. They had a bunch of guys get injured in that game. against the Suns. It was a game they really needed to win, and for him to hit the game-tying shot at the end of regulation, to hit the buzzer beater at the end of overtime, you could really sense the relief in the locker room after the game. They really needed that one.
Hopefully more of those moments to come. But in the meantime, I can't take my eyes off the cheesecake and the black and white. So we're wrapping up On the Beat. A big thanks to Tim and to Alex for being here with us. And stay tuned, because you're going to see On the Beat throughout the rest of the season. And we'll be back again at Juniors. Take care.